listen to reason? Will you open your eyes?
Eric in Sacramento, how you doing?
Hey, you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Eric.
Can you hear us?
I really didn't know, Don, that you would actually do a show on morality. You know, kind of neat.
Well, it's rare we actually get callers on our topic, so this is awesome.
I'd like to thank y'all for what you're doing, because I meet a lot of Christians who do not know about the religion, and you know they're just plain dumb as a stump. I think really atheists really need to challenge Christians to really get us to evaluate our beliefs and to study in apologetics.
I agree, because that's the easiest way to get out.
I disagree.
Okay.
So, I basically wanted to talk about the moral argument. I think it's really logical. Premise one is if objective morals exist, God exists. Premise two is objective morals do exist, and it logically follows that the conclusion is that God exists.
I think I agree with both of your premises.
No,
Go ahead.
You mean you think you disagree with both?
Disagree.
Yeah, you said agree.
I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing. I disagree with both.
So, the version of the moral argument that you're presenting, no offense, but it's the worst one. Because if you begin with the premise, your first premise was if objective morals exist, God exists. Well, okay, I'll reject that premise. Now we're done. See the problem there? You need to actually demonstrate the truth of the premise. You get
Okay.
Because what you've got there is this argument that says, if objective morals exist, God exists. Objective morals exist, therefore God exists. I mean, it's a nothing argument. It's not even. And if you dig in further into the moral arguments and the reason why people make them, there are attempts to justify that first premise, but they're flawed. And by the way, it depends. There's a lot of playing with language, whether or not what you mean by objective moral values is the same thing that somebody else might mean by objective moral values. So I'm not quite sure what it is that you think exists or is true that necessitates a God.
Okay. I have a reason for believing premise one. Morality is immaterial. You can't find morality in like any type of atom. Being that it's material,
What do you think morality is?
well, it's what God is nature. God's nature is good, and it's man's follow that which is one.
Okay, I don't recognize that as morality.
Okay, but that's what I'm attempting to prove.
Well, see, if you start with morality is God's nature, then you are creating a circular argument by default because you're injecting the very thing you're trying to prove into the very first premise.
I can see how you're saying that, but because the conclusion is that God exists.
Yes, and if you begin with morality is God's, is tied to God, you've injected what you're trying to prove at the very beginning. When I asked you what morality is, you said that it was it's what God wants or what God thinks, something like that.
Well, yeah, that's the nature of a deductive argument.
Wow. So I asked you for a definition of morality. What is morality? What do you mean when you say morality?
What? Okay, God's nature is good.
I don't care about God's nature. I don't know how you know that God's nature is good. I don't see that it's relevant. What I asked for was a definition of morality.
It's what God's commands are from His nature.
Then I reject your definition of morality. I don't see that is a definition that is of any use, and I don't think that it's an accurate definition of morality. I mean, I would accept when somebody says, hey, what's morality? Well, morality is the system by which we evaluate the consequences of actions to determine whether or not we should consider them good actions or bad or right or wrong or anything along those lines would be a good definition of morality. But if you're going to begin with morality is God's nature, we're done.
And keep in mind here that you're calling an atheist show, and atheists kind of by definition don't believe in God, so you're kind of hanging this on something that we don't believe in. And we have yet to see any real strong evidence for, so it's almost kind of going nowhere from the very beginning.
I'll assume your definition of morality, Matt. How about that?
You'll assume my definition of morality.
Yes.
Okay?
So, morality is immaterial. You can't, and it's a thought. You can't have a thought without a mind. So obviously there must be an objective, immaterial mind that produces this objective, immaterial morality.
Wrong. See, if I can evaluate, for example, the consequences of an action with respect to any value, even an arbitrary one, to determine whether or not it's consistent with that value. So why do we have the value, or why do we have certain values and not others? And these things, they don't exist. You know, the evaluations, they don't exist as things. You're right that we are using minds to conceive, but we're evaluating real things. We're physical beings in a physical universe, and so my actions have consequences to myself and to other people, and I can evaluate those consequences with respect to well-being, which is what morality is really about, well-being.
And I would say, too, that our morality is based in human nature, which is something, you know, although maybe not tangible, it's something real. You know, we all share a certain, you know, evolutionary history. We all share a lot of commonalities, like we don't want to be harmed, we don't want to be hurt, we don't want to be killed, these sorts of things.
And I won't go down that path
You won't?
because from a purely philosophical standpoint, I'm not going to appeal to, you know, our past. I will say that as physical beings, there are truths about our interactions.
Well, I bring that out because I can tell you where it comes from. I can tell you where our morality comes from. It doesn't necessarily come from some magic being, right? It comes because humans are working this out based on our understanding of ourselves, and we're social animals, and we have to figure out how to get along, and that's where it comes from.
But morality, if it's about anything, it's about well-being, and it's not necessarily even tied to humans.
Yeah, here's the problem I find with that. If morality is based off of us, humans, it's subjective.
No, it's not subjective in the sense that it's not contingent upon one mind. If it's about humanity, which I don't agree that it is, I think it's broader than that, and you can talk about it in broader terms, but that doesn't make it the evaluation subjective in the same sense that, take it, for example, the game of chess. It has rules. Those rules were arbitrary. They could have been invented by an individual or by a committee, or they could have been progressively, you know, have evolved over periods of time playing it. But whatever the rules are, the evaluation of any move with respect to the rules is itself objective. You have rules, moral values, and you have an action moving upon. And if you move upon in a way that violates these rules, or that violates, in a simpler sense, the strategy of the goal of winning the game or not losing the game, then that is an objectively bad move. It is not subjective in the sense that it's not contingent upon any mind. It is an evaluation of the consequences with respect to the values.
Okay, but that works if everyone plays math according to the rules of chess. But you see, when you're talking about the well-being,
yes, if somebody's not playing by the rules of chess, okay, that's their prerogative. But when we're talking about chess, we can evaluate it objectively. The same thing's true for morality. If somebody doesn't agree that morality is about well-being, then they're talking about something different, just like you were at the beginning. You think that morality is about God's nature. Well, I don't. So obviously we're talking about two different things. But when we get to the point where we're talking about the same thing, then it's no longer subjective.
What objective reason, though, can you give for caring about the well-being of others? That's the problem I have with secular morality.
Well, see, this is way kind of big to do on the show, but I've spent years doing a talk on the superiority of secular morality because, first of all, secular moral systems are superior, period. And it's because they are the only moral systems. Christianity does not offer a moral system. It offers moral pronouncements. I mean, you can think all day that morality is about God's nature, but now you're just stuck because if your morals come from God's nature, How is it that you've determined what God's nature actually is?
Revelation.
Well, revelation doesn't do anybody any good. Your revelation may be different from somebody else's revelation. This is the problem. When religious individuals try to attack secular morality, there is not a single objection that they levy at secular morality that is actually real and that is resolved by their own system. Because claiming that you have the insight to what God wants is no different from me claiming that I have the insight into what morality truly is. We're at an impasse. You've raised an issue that your system, which isn't a system at all, does not solve.
Okay, I'm going to have to think about that one because I know it kind of seems like a little problem of interpretation, but I want to ask you, what objective reason do we have for caring about the well-being?
What objective reason do we have for caring about well-being? That's basically what you're asking is why be moral? I'm talking about what morality is, and you're asking why be moral?
Well, yeah, because if morality is just subjective, we can do whatever we want.
Well, I've already said that, first of all, it's not subjective, that if we're going to talk about morality, and morality is well-being, then well-being is actually related to physical facts about who we are and what we do. My actions have certain consequences. Now, why should I care about that? Well, because as Don pointed out, I live in a universe where I don't live alone. It is in my best interest, well-being. I mean, it's kind of like you're addressing the issue of well-being, which is what morality is doing, is in our best interest. Now, there are some people who aren't going to be convinced of that, and that's just too bad. But now the question, as I pointed out, has moved from what morality is to why should one be moral. And the reason one should be moral is because it's in their best interest by definition. That's the reason that we talk about morality as an assessment of well-being. It's in your best interest.
Well, I think that's the very definition of subjective.
I'm sorry?
I think that's the very definition of subjective. It's just subject to the humans. If they don't care about, the whole society doesn't care about, well, and it seems like the morality has.
Look, let me use this example. I'll spin off of one of Sam Harris's analogies. Health is about your physical well-being, and we can talk about what is and isn't healthy, and those are objective facts. What is and isn't healthy for us, those are objective facts. They're not subjective. It's not, and it may be slightly different. There may be scenarios where, for example, Don might be horribly allergic to something that doesn't affect me at all, so it would be unhealthy for him and healthy for me. But we're talking about, in general, broad terms, what is physically healthy for human beings is the subject of health. Now, what you're asking is, why should I care about being healthy? I mean, that's really what you're asking. Why should anybody care about being healthy? And my answer is the same, because it's in their best interest. There's no obligation for anybody to care about being healthy, and there's no obligation for anybody to care about being moral.
But there are many societies that have different morals.
Well, there are many societies that have different opinions about what is and isn't moral.
That's subjective.
No. Because it's just the same as if there's a society that thinks drinking battery acid is healthy, they're wrong. And if there's a society that thinks that enslaving people and cutting off and female genital mutilation is moral, they're wrong. They're welcome to have their opinions about it, but they're wrong.
So your opinion is objective, but their opinion is subjective.
No, I didn't say that my opinion was objective, Eric.
Okay, but when you said if a society says drinking battery acid is wrong,
yes,
and that's their opinion that it's wrong, well, that's your opinion that it's their opinion that it's wrong.
No, it's not my opinion. Do you think drinking battery acid is good for you?
No.
Is that just your opinion, or do you have some actual evidence for that?
Well, God made battery acid.
Oh, you're done. I'm happy to have conversations about morality and deeper conversations about philosophy, but if you're just going to be stupid, if you're just going to spin along, I don't even believe that Eric was real now. Well, God made battery acid. I think I'm legitimately convinced that Eric was probably someone, perhaps an atheist, who decided, hey, I'm going to go on this whole morality, objective, subjective thing. I just
I think
because
he was an honest
because
caller.
when I was a Christian, there's no way I'd have ever said anything as stupid as God made battery acid. I mean, that's just an admission that in the middle of the argument, you have. And by the way, when you call in to talk about how wonderful it is that we challenge Christians to think more and then demonstrate that you think less, that's a problem. Who's next?